if you have an e-commerce brand where you're selling physical products online through something like Shopify, BigCommerce, WooCommerce, whatever it is, whatever platform you're selling on, you're selling physical products. And as a result, you're probably doing ads in the front end and emails on the back end to keep those people buying over and over and over. So throughout each week, maybe you even do like one a week, maybe you're doing 3 to 5 of these a week, but you're sending out email campaigns to different segments of your list. Maybe you send it to the same segment of your list. Regardless of what you're doing, you're sending out campaigns throughout each week, all right? What we want to do is make sure that you're maximizing your results from those campaigns and getting as much as you possibly can out of them. So what I want to do in this quick video is walk you through the metrics and the things you have to keep in mind in order to analyze and break down the actual performance that you're getting from your campaigns so that you can figure out what you need to improve and what you need to change or adapt. All right, so here we go. How to analyze your email campaign performance and make the proper changes by giving very little and getting a lot out. That's kind of what we're trying to do here. All right, so the first thing to consider here is your sending volume. This is a really big piece of it, and not only sending volume, but the type of content that you're sending, because it's going to help you gauge what you can be expecting from each individual email that you're sending out to your list. So a really good example of this, if you're sending a high volume of emails overall, let's say that's 6 to 7 campaigns per week. For most brands, they'd probably consider that a high volume of emails to go out. Now, if you're doing that, you're going to have a lower overall average click rate because people are getting more content from you. They're just naturally going to click less often, and you're going to get lower sales in terms of actual revenue per campaign that you send out. But the absolute number of overall clicks and overall sales and revenue that you bring in will be higher because you're sending more. It'll just be less per campaign. That tends to be what we see with a higher sending volume. And if you don't have that and you have a high sending volume, you probably have an issue and you probably shouldn't have a high sending volume. You should be dialing that back. But anyways, that's an example of where considering the sending volume is going to help you gauge what you want to keep in mind while looking at the actual metrics themselves, because you should have different expectations based on how much you're sending. So like on the other end of that spectrum, if you have a low sending volume in terms of your campaign emails, you should be expecting better metrics. Like let's say you're only sending 1 to 2 times per week, or even some brands I know watching this are only sending an email out once per month or maybe twice per month. That's very, very, very low sending volume. So in that scenario, you should be expecting a big response because you're sending these people just very, very sparingly. So that's a really big thing to keep in mind. Now, let's dive into the metrics. Actually, before I do that, I also want to mention the type of content. So you need to consider if you're sending a lot of like heavily designed emails and everything is heavily designed like that, that's going to typically that'll lead to higher click rates and good sales as a result. If you're the type of brand that sends like very text heavy emails instead, you may have a really low click rate, but still see the sales results that you want to be seeing because less people are going to read it, but those that do are going to go ahead and make that purchase. So that's a really big thing to keep in mind, as well as the type of content that you're sending. These are all just variables that can be at any point on the spectrum for your brand, but you want to know what they are going in when you actually look at your metrics, because it'll give you a baseline as to what you should actually be expecting as a successful result from your metrics. So now, jump into some metrics to aim for. First, sales is the most important thing. All we care about, we can get really lost in the weeds with open rates, click rates, deliverability, bounce rate, unsubscribe, whatever. But what really matters is the sales numbers. That's what we're after. We want successful campaigns on a consistent basis that get people, we want non-buyers occasionally converting into buyers as often as we can. And we want those buyers to keep repeat purchasing, which is the entire point of doing this email marketing in the back end for your brand. So the sales numbers that you should be expecting is 100% dependent on your product, your average order value, your market, your brand, all those types of variables. But the main one being like your product and average order value. That way you can establish a baseline that you can work from and judge your new content against. So one really good example of this, we have a client that sells lift chairs. These are $800 chairs. And they're not really something that people are going to buy really quickly. There's a longer sales cycle there, and we don't expect to sell because, I mean, they're a pretty large brand. They're doing about $700,000 a month, but we're not expecting to sell 100 of those per campaign that we send out. It's just not realistic. So because of that, we have to gauge our success in our campaign emails based on how often people actually buy that product, as an example. And then AOV also comes into that, the average order value. That's a product where the average order value tends to be between $700 and $1,000. So because of that, 5 sales for them on one campaign might look like very little, only 5 sales, but that might be about $5,000. That might be about $900, or sorry, 4 to $5,000, whatever it is. So again, these are things to keep in mind when you're analyzing the sales. But the most important takeaway there, because again, sales is all that really matters at the end of the day, is you want to have a baseline based on historical data that your brand has hit from your campaigns. And we want to be working from that, whether that's improving it or improving the average order value and keeping the number of buyers that you're getting on average the same. Whatever it is that you're optimizing for. Just know that it's going to be dependent on your product and AOV, so I can't give you a static answer. And you want to work from your historical data baseline. Now, open rates. 40% is kind of like our baseline open rate. And the reason being is because we know that if we're hitting minimum 40% open rates, then we know that our deliverability is good. If you're consistently falling below 40%, then you probably either need to, it's going to be one of 3 buckets. Or sorry, two to three buckets. The content is either the issue or the list. All right, so those are the 2 buckets that you probably need to improve if the open rates are falling below 40%. Now, the 3rd bucket that I was referencing there is the deliverability, which if you want all the walkthroughs on how to improve your email deliverability, that is in separate videos on this channel. You can literally just look up Adam Rame deliverability, email deliverability. You will see that video. That'll give you literally step-by-step what you can do to improve that. But a big reason we want 40% open rates is because it helps our sender reputation. So when you send emails out to your list, they're receiving it through Gmail, Yahoo, Outlook, maybe some other platforms. And those platforms have a sender reputation assigned to your domain. So if your domain has a terrible sender reputation where nobody opens the emails or clicks on them or replies to them, whatever it is, then those platforms are way more likely to throw you in spam because your emails just seem like spam because no one's engaging with them. So because of that, we want to send to portions of the list that are going to consistently get us those 40% open rates that we're looking for. And it's going to boost our sender reputation. So that's why that open rate metric is so important to be hitting. Now, click rates, we used to set a 1% baseline KPI for click rates. Now we've kind of lowered it to 0.75% because we've seen that as you increase that sending volume, that's like the baseline that we want to be shooting for. So we have some scenarios with clients where we'll be genuinely at 0.4% average click rates. And the sales are good still. So we're not freaking out about it. There's one specific scenario where this is happening. Most other accounts, we've really never fallen below 0.75%. In our case, but there's one specifically where this is happening. And the sales are good, so we're not freaking out about it, but we are doing a lot of testing to get back up to that 0.75% mark because that's the baseline of where we want to be, even with that high sending volume. Now, unsubscribe rate. We like to take Klaviyo recommendations for unsubscribe rate, bounce rate, and spam complaint rate, especially spam complaint rate and bounce rate because those are really, they're going to have a big impact on your deliverability as well. Especially spam complaint rate because there's a lot of other implications that come with spam complaint rate that are just out of the scope of this video, but just try to keep that below 0.1%. Again, that's a Klaviyo recommendation, so that's what we like to use as kind of our KPI. If that's ever going way above 0.1%, you know you have a content issue, or the list you have is not the content that you're giving your list is not what they expect. There's a disconnect there. That's usually what you can take away from your spam complaint rate being too high. Bounce rate, again, it's another deliverability thing. We want this to be below 1% at all times. Again, if it's not, it's probably a list issue. Unsubscribe rate is below 0.3%, but this is another one similar to sales where we like to, us personally as an agency, we like to judge this compared to historical data. So we're not going to, honestly, we don't really look at unsubscribe rate super closely other than like weekly and monthly chunks of data, meaning like how many unsubscribes did we have this week compared to the past 4 or 5 weeks. That gives us a really good like basis of, is this like a normal churn rate of people getting off the list, or do we send a lot more? Like for example, the week of Black Friday, we're expecting way more unsubscribes. And so that's a scenario where we're looking at the total number of unsubscribes compared to historical data rather than the unsubscribe rate, because that's going to fluctuate a lot campaign to campaign. So hopefully that gives you a lot of good perspective on what you should be expecting for your unsubscribe rate. And of course, all these other metrics as well. Now, if you like this, I'm going to leave the first link in the description to join my newsletter, where you can get an 81-page full email and SMS marketing training for e-commerce brands specifically. Again, you can get that for free. It's the first link in the description. And if you want help, doing this type of stuff and getting this type of stuff audited for your e-commerce brand, there's another link in the description. Check us out and see how we can help you guys out. So any questions, drop them in the comments. Talk to you soon.